Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is July 5, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. It's an honor and a pleasure today to be here with Hillary Howell. Where are you calling in from, Hillary?
I'm based in Los Angeles.
How cool is that? The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
The best thing for a human being?
Yeah.
The love of a pet.
To love a pet,
And have the pet love you back, yes.
Oh my God, that's so cool. I actually had that answer once several years ago. Someone said animals, having a pet. And now the second part is amazing because right here in Venice, California, where I'm calling from, a gentleman named Eden Abez wrote a song called Nature Boy. And it's huge. Nat King Cole made a hit, Lady Gaga, everybody's done covers of it. And the line in it that's so important is, the greatest thing you'll ever learn is to love and be loved in return.
That is true. And it coming from a dog makes it extra special.
Great answer. So let's move on. It's what's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
I prefer to read. I read a lot of nonfiction these days. I prefer reading and film and television, but mostly books.
Yeah. So did you become a reader, one, because your parents told you to read, two, they did it as an example, or on your own?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I just have always done it. My mom's a teacher. Well, she just retired. My mom was a teacher, so it was encouraged. And I preferred to sit somewhere and reading a book as opposed to running around the playground or things like that. Shocker, a librarian became as an indoor kid, but I was always a reader. So
why do you think
of all of them?
Say it again.
A little of all of them, I think.
A little of all of them. Oh yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. Again, it's really me and you versus the wording on the question. Because I say, is it this or that? You can go anywhere with it. You don't have to, be limited to my choices. So why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I mean, humans have always sort of been hunter and gatherers, whether it be food and survival or memories. So being able to have sort of something tangible to keep those things close to you seems just entirely human to me. I mean, you can see from back here that I am no stranger to maximalism. So
yeah. No, I love it because actually there is a corner where there's no frame pictures and there is. So you got great feng shui there. But is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
I have a feeling it's probably more invented, and it's become more and more common over time. So it's sort of something that has snowballed. But ultimately, I think it's also just something that's sort of part of being human.
Yeah. I love that. Do thoughts create emotions?
I would think so, yes. As someone who overthinks everything and is very emotional, I'm going to go with it. Those two things are tied together.
Yeah. Fill in the blank, Hillary. I don't know what I think until I
talk about it.
Wow, that's good. McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. And Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
It's a little of both of those.
Yeah. Can humans think without language?
Yes. Because you have to have always thought things even before you knew what words were. But you can think in colors and objects, even if you can't define what they are.
Yeah. Yeah, because Chomsky said an amazing thing. He said that language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. So what do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
That's sort of when pictures come in. If I can't quite describe what it is that I'm trying to get across, sometimes I can find something that will represent it.
Yeah. It's good. Your observations of humans in general. I mean, you almost touched on this a second ago. Are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
I think we're more feeling beings, which is why we frequently get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah. 2 questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. 1, is thinking a function of the soul?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Second
because it's
one,
fundamental to who you are.
it's fundamental to who you are. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because people usually go, well, it depends on what you mean by the soul, you know. And so you brought up these words I love, like human and who you are, you know. So the second Turing question is, can machines think?
I'm afraid for the day that they can.
Yeah. Wow. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Probably meaning. Because not everything in life brings you happiness. And there are things that are important that might not, but they're still important. So.
Yeah, that's I got it from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He says, happiness doesn't tend to last, but meaning can last.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
I think detecting it. There's so much of our brains that we don't understand and we don't know what they do. So I feel like there's a lot of control that it has that you catch on to, as opposed to that you then create it yourself.
Yeah. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Light. Thought always takes extra time.
Yeah. So the poet Audre Lorde said, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. And Yvonne Rainer responded to her and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
That is a very difficult question. I think this might not actually answer it, but I'm going to try. I think this might actually be a thing where the tools may have already been there, but are being covered again. Like the way that, here's my brief political thing, but they've done so much to just ruin the education system in this country. And if they could go back and fix things a little so kids are actually learning again and not just learning how to take a test, then they would have those tools. Those tools would be available again in a different way.
So you're saying that they started out with a good sense of what education could be, then it got hijacked by, like, now it's all test scores. Yep. And they're not using the fundamental.
I don't think that they're teaching children to think anymore.
Yeah.
And if people were taught how to think, then they might actually be better at understanding how to turn that into action.
Wow, that's great. What new toy do you suggest?
Something without a screen. I don't know, something tangible and fungible.
That's good. Something without a screen.
I also worry that kids aren't learning cursive anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like knowing how to write in cursive is fundamental.
Yeah, like I take notes as we're talking. So it's like my head looks down and I know people are looking into, and they think I'm being distracted, not looking at you, but it's because I'm taking notes.
I take notes all the time.
I had great handwriting, and now my handwriting's so bad that I go, oh my God, would you slow down? So why are you taking a note if you can't read it later? You know? And it's like really bad when I look at my note and I go, what does that say? And it's like,
Yep.
why?
Typing has ruined it.
Yeah.
Typing has ruined all of it.
Yep. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
The future, like what's going to happen to like my brother's kids and knowing how things are now and that it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
Whether or not there will be a generation who can start to try and correct some of it. I worry about a lot of things all the time.
Yeah. What's the difference between worry and concern, you think? Because I mean, look at you. This is when my mom died, I gave a speech or, at her wake. And I says, there's a lot of people in this room who worried that Dolores worried too much. And in my opinion, she was concerned, but there's two different words, worry and concern, but it's sort of a fine line, because when you said I worry about my brother's kids, wouldn't that be concern?
Yes. I will say I worry about, let's just go with everything. So it's sort of an abstract idea. Like I'm just worried about life, but concern I think is more focused. So, I'm worried about the future that's going to be left behind for my brother's kids. I'm worried about, that it's 120 degrees and was the hottest June on record, things like that would be a concern. Worry is just, I worry about life, the universe, and everything.
Yeah. So, Marshall McLuhan learned from the poets that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about the inventions, like me and you just trying to cope with screens everywhere. I mean, so I asked you, the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Because it's safer.
Yeah.
It's easier.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, people will pretty much always take the easy way out.
Yeah. Do artists have moral obligation?
I think everyone has a moral obligation.
Yeah.
Whether or not they feel that and act on it, but everyone has a moral obligation.
Yeah. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Are there new ideas?
Hey, Hillary, you win. This series is about inventing new questions. So when you answer a question with a question, that's it. We hit the holy grail. Because they ask Irish people, why do you people answer questions with questions? And they go, we do, eh?
No, I mean, probably old ideas. There are a lot of bad old ideas that we're stuck with. There are a lot of good old ideas too, but
yeah. Well, no, I got it from John Cage. He said, I can't understand why people are frightened of new ideas. I'm frightened of the old ones.
He's not wrong.
And then the guy who invented the windshield wiper, that goes on a timer, he said, people are very open-minded about new things as long as they're exactly like the old ones. Things.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's probably very true.
Yeah. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
I've never been good at that. I've never really been good at that. I have photos of things and then people would tell stories, so I never know whether or not it's a memory from myself or from someone else.
Yeah.
Who told me that story, and therefore it's sort of skewed to their point of view.
Yeah. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
It's unfortunately, I think, a bit of both.
Yeah.
because there are definitely things that are always stuck with you that you don't ever want to remember again. And it feels like you keep those and lose the things you do want to remember a little bit more quickly.
Why?
I don't know why that is.
That is a perplex. Who invented that? That is like, why am I remembering this?
Exactly. I don't know. My therapist and I have been talking about it for years and have never come to an answer.
So tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model, and what specifically was that impact?
My grandmother, my mom's mom, was a very independent woman. She raised 9 children, predominantly on her own, and we spent a lot of time with her because she didn't live that far from us. So I learned a lot from her, and subsequently also my mother, how to be incredibly independent and be able to rely on myself. And I think that that's helped sort of shape who I am now, possibly
Beautiful.
to my detriment on occasion, but for the most part, it's made me very self-sufficient and made it so I could do things like go far away to college and not be worried about it. You know, I moved to California 20 years ago now, and my whole family is back east, but I've been fine. So
yeah,
I think it's attributable to them. And outside of my family, there are a lot of people, I think. So let me think about this for a second.
no hurry. That's all right. Thinking in silence and thinking is fine.
I mean, she's probably a terrible example of a human being, but I've read a lot of Dorothy Parker since I was a kid, and her quick wit and the way that she sort of was part of the world, but also observed it, I think also helped turn me into the fine, upstanding individual I am today.
That's a Dorothy Parker quote at the end. Well, you know, we're putting on this show in a couple weeks, if you're not aware, and it's people who wrote books that also wrote a song. And I have to tell you, you know, Dorothy Parker wrote 2 songs that Billie Holiday sang.
I did know that, actually. Yes.
Yes,
I know a lot about Dorothy Parker.
You know Dorothy Parker, then that is great. I'm really impressed. So did your parents raise you a particular religion?
I grew up Catholic.
Yeah. Do you pray?
No.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
I understand free will is important, but I'd like some level of explanation for a lot of the horrors that people attribute to, that people commit against each other.
Yeah.
Without any, like, why was there no interference, man? That's kind of my question. Like, I feel like there are times where you have to come in and be the adult in the room, and that was literally his job.
Amazing. Why no interference, dude? That is like, do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think evil people exist.
Yeah.
I think evil is also, there are people who are not evil who can do evil things, but there are evil people in this world.
Yeah. Well, the sort of hidden question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Yes, I agree with that.
Coppola says, he stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I think he's correct. I was raised to be nice to everyone no matter what.
Yeah.
And I still have that in me, which I think is a mostly good thing, because I find it much less taxing to be nice to people than it is to be mean to them.
Yes.
So I don't, if someone actively tries to harm me, I won't necessarily acknowledge the harm that they're doing, but will acknowledge them as a person, because maybe that will turn them around. Maybe if you see that person, it will help make them want to be better too. So.
Wow. Is that like a hate the sin, not the sinner?
I mean, I suppose a little.
Yeah.
But well, yes, I do think there are evil people in the world and some people cannot be helped. I'd like to think that most people are inherently good.
Yeah.
I'm cynical, so I'm actually surprised I'm saying this, but I think it's true.
But, Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. Then someone said, well, villains don't think they are bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. And then Gregory Bateson says, when the criminal gets caught, does he go, oh, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, wow, I did something morally or socially wrong? So it's a lot of prompts. But the basic question is, does punishment work?
I don't think it does.
Yeah.
I think rehabilitation is always a better answer.
Yeah.
There are always going to be people who won't learn from that, and punishment might be the only answer. But I'd like to think that if you show someone sort of the right path, which again is entirely subjective, but that they can improve.
Yeah. No, that's a great word. Reform, rehabilitation. And James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin. He basically checked out and he said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
It's also about how the person who created that work is interpreting life. It gives you a new point of view.
Yeah.
I think, yes, you can go outside and see a tree, but the tree you're seeing on a screen might be a tree you can't see because you've never been to a place where those grow.
Yeah.
It allows you the opportunity to see more things, experience other things than just what's outside your door.
Yeah. So, Hillary, thank you. This is fun. And walk me through a little of your tipping points. Like, so, are you growing up and you're reading? Where did you go? Oh, I want to be a writer. And then, what did you study in college? And then what's the tipping point to be an archivist? That is basically what I would say. You're an archivist.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So those kind of tipping points to be writer and then archivist.
I always liked writing. I think it was just a byproduct of reading as much as I did. My brother is also a writer, so he influenced me a lot in my life. I went to a high school for the arts where I was a writer. So it just sort of is a thing that was ingrained in me and what I did. Then in college, I was an American Studies major, which is basically just fancy sort of history/English. But most of the classes I took were film classes because Brandeis is great like that. And
really? So you mean film theory or film production?
Film theory.
Yeah.
And then all I wanted to do was work in publishing. I wanted to help put more books in the world. So after college, I moved to New York. It was 2001, so not the best time to move to New York, but it was an experience. And I worked for Cambridge University Press for 2 years. I was an assistant, and I learned a lot about sort of the process of publishing and how you put more books into the world, but realized that it isn't actually what I wanted to do. And I wasn't sure then. I sort of had a brief existential crisis. So I ended up going back to Boston and visiting with my old advisor, my old college advisor, and I had tickets to go see the Pie Tasters. So it was a twofer. And he sat me down and told me about a program he had heard about at UCLA that was a program specifically for moving image archive studies. So it was literally to just go become a film archivist. So I took the GRE and applied to grad school and ended up at UCLA to get my master's in moving image archive studies, which is a program at UCLA that was sort of half in the School of Library Science and half in the School of Theater, Film, and Television. So I got to do both things that I really like. And it led me here. I was going to go back east and work, Library of Congress or for a nonprofit or something, but my first job was for New Line Cinema. So I got a job in the studio system and ended up staying in Los Angeles, and 20 years later, I'm still here. So
really
that was my last tipping point. So.
That was really concise, but I got to ask you, did you study with Snowden Becker?
No, I interned with Snowden at the Academy.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
She didn't join the UCLA program until after I was gone already.
Yeah, because she's one of my heroes.
Oh, Snowden's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was the second graduating class of that UCLA program. So
yeah,
it was very early in that program's existence.
Yeah, she's helped me immensely with my archives over the years. And all these questions I asked her, I asked you, I asked her a couple months ago. So, but let's go back to the publishing for a second. You said, I want to get into publishing. Does that mean like being an editor? What does it mean to get into publishing exactly?
I wanted to be an editor. I wanted to edit books. But I saw how the editors were, and I didn't want to do that anymore. It just didn't feel right anymore.
Yeah, but that's funny. Feel what they were, because it seems like you go to someone who has a vision, and then you go, well, you got to maybe move these words, or could you puff this? And it's like, what is it? A homogenizing art. But, I mean, they know they're working on getting your book read. So it's not like I'm trying to get rid of of editors, but at the same time, it feels like, our editors just want to be writers in the law.
I honestly think editing is a lot more important than people get it credit for. I think this is true for movies and television too. There are definitely some movies that have come out of late that could have used a better editor.
You mean exact film editing? Yes.
But also, it's someone else reading your work and then advising on it just helps you see things from another perspective, just in case there's something you're missing. So I think editors do serve an important purpose, and it is a noble endeavor that I at one point wanted to do, and then just realized I wasn't cut out for it. Yeah.
Well, let's just stay on this creativeness element for a second, because indeed writing, like Dorothy Parker, is like a creative pursuit. Then being an editor is a creative pursuit, and being an archivist includes some creative pursuit. So a screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
I mean, I'd like to think that anything I create, the intention is clear. I disagree with Kubrick on that one. I think I go to movies made by people specifically because I like their point of view and I want to see more of it. I don't want that taken away.
Yeah.
So I always try and be very thoughtful as I do things in the hopes that comes across. And other people are going to interpret what you do however they want to. But if you can help make them think about something differently than the way that they used to, then you're doing something right.
It's good. And Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much do you think of your reader when you're writing something in your creative process? When you're, it's almost like how much are you thinking of your researcher when you're archiving? Because I mean, archives exist for the researcher, wouldn't you say?
Not all archives, but yes. I mean, you have to consider the end product as you're archiving. People need to be able to find these things again. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
So making sure that you create, clear and concise metadata so that anyone who's searching through your collection can find what they're looking for. making sure that you stored things properly. So in 50 years, if somebody needs to see it again, it's going to be safe and secure so you can pull it back out. That's why we do this. So it's vital to the process.
Amazing. You asked the question that I was going to ask next. Why do we archive? So, let me just give my little spiel for a second, because we're really delving deep into why do people archive? Because it's sort of this thing, everybody collects boxes of stuff, and then someone comes along and says, well, I'll tell you the truth on mine was when Norman Mailer sold his archives for $1 million, I says, if he could get $1 million, I could at least get $100, Now I have, University of Santa Barbara archiving my stuff, and it's sort of like pay to play. I like contribute money to them to get them moving, and I feel it's like a good investment, and they're doing a great job. But it's not really I wanted to make money, but it's just like this thing became huge, how somebody sold their archives, for gazillion dollars. And then there's other people, their kids or their family are trashing the stuff. And we're like, wait a minute. So, just the bottom line is if you go sort of Eastern philosophy, Baba Ram Dass says, be here now, live in the present. Why do you think humans ever develop this sense that we have to save stuff? So, is the first archivist the people in Egypt putting stuff in their, in their casket, or in their tombs? So, any thoughts on this? Why do humans archive? Is it more innate or invented, or any thoughts on that?
I have a feeling it's more invented. It seems like it was that you take it with you, so therefore you have to have it. But I think the past informs the present. So if you've lost the past, then where are you?
Yeah.
I honestly, I think more people should donate their archives to institutions and also contribute toward maintaining them there. I think that's wonderful, because archiving is not an inexpensive endeavor, and people don't always consider that. I spent my entire career scraping for every dollar I can get to, maintain whatever collection it is I'm trying to, and justify my existence every budget cycle. So it's something more people need to understand why it's important. And granted, it can be important for different reasons to different people, but without some recognition of where you came from, where are you going?
Yeah, a couple things there, Hillary. This is really good and important, because more should donate. So I know, just talking to Snowden, she says there's not a lot of budget now, and I have to be discerning as an archivist.
Yes.
And people go, I have this archive, and then you as the who's ever making the decision says, we like it, but we won't take it. I'll tell you the truth. This is an amazing story. I have this film festival that's 30 years old, and it's all pixel vision. It's toy video camera films for 30 years. And I went to USC and UCLA like 20 years ago, and I go, I have these VHS tapes, pixel vision. Will you take them? And they both went, yes. And then I says, some of them have mold on the VHS that developed. They go, nope, we won't take them. Somehow I hit Snowden. She goes, I'll take them. And it was like, what? I was amazed. So I wanted to donate them because they piled up my house, and my wife was freaking out. There's too many boxes of crap around here. No, it's not crap, it's archives. Yeah, well, so it's that fine line between stuff and archives. Who's determining it? And so the past informs the present reminds me of Wyndham Lewis said, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. So again, it's like, of course, we know that studying history helps us. It can help us. But, why is that? Isn't life in the big picture just move forward? I'm just getting back to the nitty gritty of it all. Yeah.
mean, yes, ultimately the point of life is to keep moving forward, but it's nice to remember. Also, you try not to repeat the mistakes of the past, but if you've forgotten those mistakes, then aren't you doomed to repeat them? So
Yeah.
having some record to go off of just reminds you of what happened once, so that maybe you can change it or do it differently if it's your turn, or if it was the right thing to do, you can continue to move that forward.
Yeah. It's beautiful because, you know, I looked up the word archive for its etymological roots, and it was a verb in 1819, but it actually with an S as a noun, it's 1600s. So the noun archive came before the verb by 200 years.
Ah.
But the verb means record. No, excuse me. The noun means records or documents. That's well understood. Preserved as evidence.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But then you go, what does preserved come from? That's 1400. That means to keep safe.
Yes.
Free from harm. You know, pre, before, and save. But one other part of the word archive that I really was intrigued by was it came from the Greek root word for town or hall or public building. And I mean, now you work in a huge public building, really. Well, no, it's not a public building, it's a private building, right?
Yes, I work in a huge private building.
Right. And it's amazing that that's the root of the word, but it came from archive, archon, archon, meaning like the first ruler. So that's sort of like what I've used in the past, the gatekeeper. Like who are the gatekeepers? You know, you become fond of this or that subject. Like if the Dorothy Parker estate came to you and go, will you take it? You wouldn't go, well, maybe. You like, give it all.
I'd lose my mind. She donated everything to the NAACP, but yes, I would lose my mind.
Did she really? And is the archive well kept?
I honestly don't know.
Yeah, because I remember showing a film called The Mark Twain something. These two guys wanted to make a film about Mark Twain, and they realized two lawyers own Mark Twain in New York.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, I mean, it's basically his estate, like, you know, in his words. But, you know, when it comes down to it, who's making, like in your part of archiving, who's making the aesthetic judgments? And how do you make those? Well, we want this, but we can only take 5 of the 100 boxes. Like, talk maybe a little about that decision of how do you make that decision? How do you process that?
So one of the first things you want to do if you're starting an archive is to think about your mission statement and why you want to exist. And then from there, you would create your collections policy, which tells you what it is that you will keep and why. Usually those can help inform any decisions that you make down the line. There are practical considerations to this. Like if you don't have a ton of space or money, there are going to be certain things that you may have to deaccession is our fancy library term for it.
Wait, say the word again.
Deaccession.
How do you spell that? DEACCESION? Okay, deaccession. Okay, yeah. Go ahead. And
so
what is that?
When you pull something into your archive, you accession it. So when you let it go, you deaccession it.
I see.
It's a fancy library term for throwing something out. It sounds better. So.
Well, this is a really practical. I have a can of Campbell's soup, and now I met Andy Warhol in the mid-70s in a bookstore at a book signing, and everybody went and bought cans of Campbell's soup, and they had him sign it. Now, somehow I didn't keep that over the years. I should have sliced the label off because the can would probably in 40, 50 years, like blow up or, you know, make a mess and ruin the label.
Well, I would just drill a hole in the bottom to get all.
Oh, there you go.
Inside out, and then you should be good to go.
That's it. You want to.
So that way you're preserving the full piece of it. You should never have food or drink in an archive, ever.
That's no food or drink. That is good.
Not even water. Just practical considerations. Keep food and drinks out of your archive.
Out of archives. That is so smart. Because now my friend, well, the funny thing is my friend did a Campbell soup with Andy Warhol's face on the soup can. And I've been watching it. And I'm going, now I know exactly what I'm going to do. Now I know that eventually that's going to rust and, you know, get like funky.
Drill a hole out of the bottom, rinse out the inside, dry it, and you should be fine.
Yep. And that you got to be really fussy because you don't want to get the label wet.
Correct. You have to be very
that's
careful.
Paper. Yeah.
You would I would wrap the top of it in plastic and be very careful and direct with the way that you did that.
Yeah. But it is intense that humans invented paper and how well paper holds up. Because I mean, what is your building? 80% printed matter, 50% in
ours is actually probably more video, audio tape, and motion picture film.
Yeah.
But
then film.
Paper. Ours is primarily going to be film, but most of them are paper.
Yeah. But film, again, we know about nitrate. That's really hard and you got to be cautious. But film itself, then you got the vinegar syndrome, right?
Yes. If you keep it cold and dry, though, you should be fine.
Cold and dry is the way to deal with it.
Cold and dry is the way to deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting all the good tips.
Cold and dry. I like to simplify things, but cold and dry is the way to go.
And what's the, I mean, I want to go on with our other questions, but I'm just on archiving. What's the future of archiving as you see it? Is it limited because the arts don't get budget so much? And is the digital realm helped archiving a lot or not necessarily? Because in my opinion, archiving basically comes down to a pen or a felt marker in a box, or in your case, a can that holds the film, or a container that holds 16mm film, in the marking on the side of it.
I think digitization and digital copies of things have greatly assisted with access. Having a digital version of something, a digital surrogate, allows you to share that a lot more easily. It protects your physical asset because no one has to touch it. And it means that you can disseminate it widely if you want to. But there are things to consider with born digital materials and anything you digitize, in that also sort of degrades. Like, you have to constantly migrate it to new formats. I mean, if you think about it, if you had something, like an audio session in Pro Tools 7, you can't open that now. If you, used to use Word, or Final Draft 20 versions ago, you can't open that now unless you saved an old computer that could still open it. So it's honestly harder to maintain digital assets, I think, than it is physical ones, because that's the thing you have to consider.
Harder to maintain. But just I'm sorry to divert for a second. Do you guys have a bunch of old computers so you can? You do. Yeah. Then you have to find the people who maintain the old computers.
Yes, and that's the other issue, because those people are starting to get older. And one thing that we're doing is sort of mentoring and trying to train up the next generation of folks who know how to fix old video equipment and old computers. But it's harder than you'd think. It is something to think about. Also, hard drives are not archival.
Hard drives are not archival. Wow.
Hard drives can fail at any point.
Can fail. And is it really that big of a difference of moving part hard drives? And now is the new way to not use a moving part hard drive? Is there a difference there?
I think SSDs are slightly more sort of solid, but hard drives themselves are just, if you drop it and a piece kicks off, then it's not going to load again. They're just always back things up in more than one place.
Yeah. Including the cloud? There's that.
I still have many questions about the cloud, but yes, the cloud is a good way to keep one copy of something, but it should not be your only copy.
Yeah, because this is, Hillary, really what impressed me at the USC event where you spoke was when you said migrate the media, because that's, with Pixel Vision, I don't know if you're aware, it's a toy video camera that Fisher-Price put out that recorded audio and picture on audio cassettes.
Oh, the old school cassettes? Yes, I had some of those in a collection.
Yeah. And so then in 30 years, you could dump it onto anything. But I never showed them off the audio cassette at the public screenings. I would show them off a VHS tape. And then, so they weren't don't send me your master,
No.
and so then the VHS became, and then once we switched to digital, the medium fell out of lip sync. It was like digital was horrible for Pixel Vision. Then it sort of fixed up. Then it's like now a guy rigged one up where he can shoot through the Pixel camera with an audio cassette in the Pixel camera into his cell phone and live stream it. So, I mean, it's endless how that migrating the media has happened. But it is the thing you said where I have to interview this woman, because you said don't throw the master out.
Never throw your masters out.
Oh my God. I'm also in the Super 8mm movie world. And it's like, my parents shot 8 hours over 40 years, and it's priceless. Yep. We put it all up on archive.org, by the way. And that was off of VHS. So it, degrade little, but it's like that, my family says, well, just throw the Super 8s. I go, no way, you can't throw those Super 8s away. But doesn't seem practical. People don't, they go, well, if I can hit a button and watch it on my computer, why would I want the master,
Well, I mean, technology is constantly changing, and the ability to transfer things is constantly changing and getting better.
Yeah.
If all you have is the copy that you made that's on a subpar format, you can't make that better at any point. If you still have your original, you can always go back to your original and retransfer it. One of my jobs, they bought a library, and that library had been owned by a company that should have never owned a production company. And they, in the 80s, took all of the film, transferred it to 1-inch video, and threw the film out.
Oh,
so literally all that existed was these 1-inch tapes. Those were now the masters. So if you wanted to release that on HD now in 4K, you can't do it because you have a standard definition source, and that's all you have because the film is gone. It's just things like that people need to consider. I mean, my background specifically working in, production companies and studios is slightly more commercial. So if you want to monetize it, you need to have your original.
Yeah. Amazing. Because I actually have taken off of archive.org Super 8 films of my family that had gone onto VHS, then onto archive, then onto a DVD, and then the DVD onto archive, and put it on a feature film. And it was like, it looked good enough for us. Our standard was low, but it worked,
Right.
But I know it could have been richer or whatnot. But I have to tell you this story because, I worked for Frank Zappa for 10 years, and he made a feature film in the early 70s that's sort of called the first film feature ever shot on video, then transferred to 35mm. It's called 200 Motels, and it's a known story. The producer they transferred it to 35mm and made the film. They took the 1-inch masters and sold them as stock. What do you call it? Blank
stock footage, yeah.
Blank stock footage. And somebody taped over that. It was like, oh my God. So over the years, it's been this process of, Sonic Solutions or whatever, trying to get the sound in the picture better. But just why? To make some money selling this stock? I mean, that it was probably pennies what they made.
No, that's a silly decision to have made, but
Yeah.
people don't always think about the long-term ramifications of these decisions.
They don't know what they're making as art. They just think of it as product.
Yes.
No.
But you'd think they'd be more careful with something they consider product.
Exactly.
But
yeah,
not everybody is. We're trying.
Yeah. You're partly educational with your clients, right?
I try, yeah. Try and make sure they understand why what they're doing is important and why they should spend the money and what'll come out of it the other end.
Are they 50% listening, 80%, or they hardly listen?
Depends. A lot of them do listen, which is nice.
Yeah.
It can be a battle sometimes still, because again, people don't like spending money. So that's just a fundamental truth of life, is that if you have money, you don't tend to like to spend it because that's how you keep having it. But you can usually get through, at least to a degree, and get them to understand why it's what they need to do. And
Hillary, it sounds like we're back to that question when we talk to God. It's like, why do people value money over life? Come on.
It's unfortunate that is where we are.
Let's ask you, if you don't mind, on archive.org. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of this organization. What kind of an amazing organization? Because my understanding is, why would you put something on YouTube that might be pulled because of copyright when you can put it on archive? Then I start thinking, I'm doing all my interviews. This interview, for instance, is on YouTube Live right now. As soon as we end, it's on YouTube. You're an archive. I ask my friends who are big tech IT people, computer people, I say, should I worry that someday YouTube will just shut down and all my masters are on there? To archive.org or so, or is the same thing's going to happen to archive? Because that's what I heard, that the guy who runs archive moved his address to Canada when Trump got in, just so he was like a little covered. Did you know that?
But
he still has his building in San Francisco. But I've heard in the last couple months or recent that archive is being hassled a little.
That's entirely possible. Yeah.
But what do you think? What do you think? My archive is huge with the interviews. I've interviewed people for 40 years. These 200 on YouTube on this channel, should I worry and have them post somewhere else?
I would keep copies of them, yes. Because ultimately, if someone else is in control of your masters, you're not.
Yeah.
This is my main worry about the cloud, philosophically, is that if you have your things in the cloud, you don't actually control them. Like if they were in a server that was in your building. So ultimately, keeping copies for yourself prevents that concern from existing. So you don't have to worry if someday Google's going to fold YouTube, or they might shut down your channel for some reason and all that stuff goes away. I just don't trust it.
Yeah, no, because my friend who works for Google said, don't worry, they won't shut down YouTube or archive. And it's like, well, maybe not in my lifetime, but in just a real practical, what would I do? I really only need the audio. What would I do? I'd take every YouTube interview and dump it onto a hard drive and then store it in a home or a archive. That's
back it up onto a second hard drive, keep them in different places, and keep it. And then and make sure you restart them sort of every year or so to exercise them, to make sure that they'll boot up.
You mean restart the hard drive once a year?
Plug it into your computer and make sure that it boots up and loads.
And then you're saying then every 10 years you got to replace the hard drive?
Probably 7 to 10 years. Yeah.
Every 7 to 10 years.
Again, digital is way harder to maintain. Like it's just
amazing. Because my first audio cassette I ever taped, it's from the mid 60s. And I put it on archive.org. And I'm amazed that when I transferred it 5 years ago, that the audio cassettes still played well because people said, no, magnetic tape will lose it after a while. We never knew.
It depends on how you store it, but and a lot of magnetic tape has caused problems over the years, but there's things you can do to mitigate it. You know, you bake it before you transfer it, and that helps readhere the magnetic particles to the base. There's ways to remove mold and things like that. So there's a lot of that stuff, even if you think it's gone, can be brought back.
Yeah. And then in DVDs and CDs are even worse than magnetic for losing it?
I think so, because you really don't have an option. Like if it gets scratched, you just can't play it again. With magnetic audio, you at least have, or magnetic audio and video, you at least have sort of a longer thing. So even if you lose part of it, you might still have the rest of it.
Yeah. So, wow, why do humans keep making things and they're making them worse? You'd think we make it better.
Well, because ultimately it's about making it easier to use. It's not about longevity.
Not longevity.
People don't think about longevity necessarily. They just want, you know, it's easier for you to stick a CD, you know, in your computer or just have something on the cloud than, you know, to carry around 1-inch tapes, which are, you know, this big. So it's all about making things smaller and easier.
It's all about easier and not about longevity. Isn't that weird? Because, you know, it's again, why do they stick these things in a tomb? But the body degrades, there's bones, and then there's something in this tomb that lasts.
Yeah.
Why did the Egyptians think that was like, who's going to open up the tomb? I guess they thought tombs were, you opened them up or something.
No, I think in that instance specifically, it was so the person had it in the afterlife.
Oh, they have it in the afterlife. Yeah.
It was more about the person they buried having that to take with them than it was that anyone would open them up again.
That's like one of my favorite Paul Krasner jokes. He says, I only believe in reincarnation in one of my past lives.
Yes.
So, you know, McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness, like knife and fork extends our teeth, the shutter in a camera's extension of our eyelid, even non-tangible like religion or philosophy might be an extension of consciousness. What is, he would say it extends a human sensorium. I say extends a humanness. What does archiving extend? What humanness does it extend?
Your brain, your memories.
Yeah.
It's a tangible physical representation of your memories.
Yeah. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
To live alongside other people in a world, compromise. I understand the importance of convictions, but you have to live in a society, so compromise is sort of necessary.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, Hillary, but that one you got right. You know how many 80% of people say conviction. That's the funny thing.
I mean, I understand. I'm fairly stubborn, so I do get it. But
yeah,
as I've grown older, I realize how important compromise is.
Yeah. Then you've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these three elements? Luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
I'd like to say skill played the largest part. Maybe a little bit of luck after that. I never really had ambition. All I wanted to do was sit in a dark room and catalog stuff and be surrounded by, you know, things that mattered to me. And that served me well and got me where I am today. Now I don't get to sit in dark rooms anymore. They make me go places and talk to people.
You mean you have to travel a lot and meet your clients in person?
I do. Actually, I'm traveling the next 3 weeks. So
wow.
It's good we got this in.
You would think you could do it all on Zooms, but you mean they want...
I mean, when you're dealing with someone's archive, you kind of need to be there to see it in person.
Yeah.
You need to physically understand what you're looking at.
Yeah.
You have to understand size and condition, and that stuff can't really be gleaned from a zoom camera very easily.
Well, Hillary, it's interesting because that question changed over the years. I would say, is ambition based more on fear or joy? 80% of people would say fear.
I think
then
fear.
and then I read William Friedkin, the director of The Exorcist, a year ago or two. He put out a book and he says, in Hollywood, skill and luck have nothing to do with it. It's all ambition.
I mean, I can see that being true in Hollywood.
Yeah. But I like that you said skill first, because guess what? People tend not to say that because I think they're like, oh, that's too braggadocious. It's like, no, if that's what's had you reach your accomplishments, that's good.
I'd like to think so. I have terrible luck, never find a parking spot, all that stuff. So it can't be luck.
What T.S. Eliot said, poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Pictures.
Nice. There is two film heroes of mine that say their mantra is, George Manupelli says, ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says, there is no self-expression. And Cecil Taylor, jazz pianist, says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making more self-expression or more your vehicle for whatever technologies, culture, and environments are dominant?
Probably the second one, because while it is self-expression, all of those things inform yourself.
Yeah.
So it comes through yourself, but comes from your surroundings.
Yeah. Can art making be egoless?
No, I do not think it can.
I would have loved to ask that question to Dorothy Parker. Is it more a vehicle or more self-expression? She would have had the most witty answer.
She would have, yes. And it would have been great. And she also would have said that there is no art without ego.
Is perception reality?
No.
Lewis Carroll. Oh, go ahead.
I was saying, I don't know if we know what reality is because everything is colored by your perception.
Yeah. Well, Lily Tomlin says reality is just a collective hunch.
She's not wrong. I think that's I like that.
Yeah. Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Lately? That I don't know. It's possible, yes. I don't always have the most confidence, so any day that I wake up and get to do something cool and exciting in my life feels like an impossible.
That's cool. That's like Frank Zappa said, it's the world against you. Pick the world, but when something good happens, it's a bonus.
That's true.
So tell me one major element of your archivingness, your creative love of, you love your career, right? You love your calling.
I do. Yeah. I stumbled into this a little bit, but it ended up being the best decision I possibly could have ever made.
No, it's good. Duchamp said, get your life and your job as mixed up as possible. Then people go, don't take your job home with you. But it seems as though it brings you joy and it's like breathing for you. It's like part of who you are.
It is. That's probably why I work too much.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time setting it aside. Like, we just got back from 2 weeks in Scotland and I brought my work phone still, even though I knew I shouldn't have, because I like what I do. So I'm not inclined to just toss it aside.
Yeah. So tell me one major element of that stayed the same and one major element that's changed in the time you've been doing it.
When I first started doing this, life was a little bit easier because my job was simpler. I had one focus I had, I had, well, I had 8 jobs, but I had 1 job, and in my, my goal was to preserve and provide access to a specific collection for a specific company. And as I've gotten older, that focus has become a little bit more scattered, because now I'm beholden to a lot of masters. And so that can sometimes be a lot harder, because everybody thinks that they're the most important.
Yeah.
But you have to divine what actually is the most important, and make everyone think that they're that important, but also temper expectations. So I've gotten a lot more political as I've been through my career and gotten older, which I don't like about myself, but understand why it's important.
Yeah, you use the word patience. My mom said a great thing I love. God, give me patience and give it to me now.
Yes, exactly.
So what you've had to do is develop an aesthetic, how to tell people what to prioritize.
Yes.
It's like how do I say this? It's like art of persuasion, isn't it?
It's a little, how to win friends and influence people. You have to make everyone think that they're the most important, and also make them understand what reality is. And sometimes that's very difficult.
Yes, hello. Well, it fits with this one. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Well, I mean, I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and I became a librarian, which is literally, I think, the only job you can do where that would be a strength and not a weakness.
Right.
My ability to organize and maintain things is why I knew that this was a job I could do. But most people find me a little annoying when it comes to the level of being pedantic about the stuff that I can be. But to do this job, you have to. So.
Well, librarians are my hero. I go to the library every day. It's like my business office. And it's just something I've started when I was a kid. And I think libraries are just the place,
They are. Libraries and archives are definitely my favorite places.
Yeah. So fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when
it moves you forward.
Yeah. What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
I'd like to. Women are more thoughtful.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think for the most part, less emotional.
Wow, less emotional. That's good to hear. The cliche is women are emotional and they get it out. Men are linear, Why do you think women live longer?
Because they process things a little bit more consistently. Yeah. A lot of men I know bottle things up and then explode, which is not a healthy way to function, as opposed to just dealing with it as you go. I mean, not necessarily letting things roll off your back, but actually processing and working through them, and then you move on to the next thing. Yep. So it doesn't sit inside you like a cancer and grow. And I think that has to do with it.
It's really good. This cliche I love to repeat is women know, men suppose.
I can see that. I haven't heard that one before. It's good.
And what caused matriarchy?
Sorry, one more time.
What caused matriarchy?
What caused matriarchy?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think being more thoughtful led women to the ability to take more control and to focus that control. Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you one other that it's not, I don't believe it, but when I heard it, it seems sort of funny, but the word mafia begins with the letter M-A, ma, because women run the world, but they let men think they run the world.
That is true. I get more things done by making other people, frequently men, think it's their idea.
Wow. When I said that to a woman in our reading club, she goes, "Shh, don't tell people that."
Pretty much, yeah. Keep that one in your pocket, because that's the way I get more things done than you would believe, is by letting men think it was their idea.
Wow.
It works pretty much every time.
I believe it. So there's a line, Hillary, that goes, "You create what you resist." Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into "You are what you hate." James Joyce said, "It's a curious thing how your brain is how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve." And Louis Buñuel said, "Thank God I'm an atheist." So this line, this thought, you create what you resist. I'm not saying you, Hillary, but one creates what one resists. Any thoughts on that line?
Well, I mean, don't they always say that you sort of become the opposite of your parents? You try to sort of completely, become you become something different than what you saw.
Yeah.
So I think that's fair. I dated a guy once whose parents were like Berkeley hippies, and he became a Republican. So I think that's true.
Wow, because I was going to say Frank Zappa did an anti-drug commercial in the 60s, and it said, "Don't do speed. It will turn you into your parents."
That's I mean, yeah. I'm a baby Generation Xer, but a Generation Xer nonetheless. And we dealt with the world that our parents gave us, and I'd like to think that we all sort of handle it a little bit differently than the way that they handled it before us.
But when my female peers were turning 50, I was turning 50 20 years ago. I said they were fretting becoming their mothers. My male friends were not fretting becoming their mothers, even though most of us were raised more by our mothers than our fathers. And Oscar Wilde nailed it. He says, men don't fret. Men don't fret becoming their mothers, and that's their problem. And so, I mean, isn't it like this line you said, we become the opposite of our parents, but sometimes you say your parent's an alcoholic, then you don't become an alcoholic because you saw their action, or you become an alcoholic because it's in your DNA. So it's hard to even figure how much is DNA and how much is free will or, self-control.
Well, nature versus nurture is always sort of the question that you can never really answer. I don't think I've ever fretted becoming my mother. I like my mother, so it doesn't worry me a ton. But
that's
I could
good.
see that being a thing.
But do you think a longevity is more DNA or more lifestyle choice?
I think it's lifestyle choice.
Really? Yeah.
I mean, I've made decisions about my life growing up based on the things that I experienced as a child.
Yeah. How do you find peace of mind?
I watch a specific episode of Parks and Recreation, and then I feel better and can move on with my day.
Parks and Rec specific episode. I like that.
Flu season part 2 is the episode. It's from season 6.
How cool is that? So these are 5 quick Alan Watts questions, just off the top of your head in a couple words. First one, who started it all?
I mean, I don't know what it is. I don't have a good answer for that one. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. 2, are we going to make it?
No.
3, where do we put it?
Pockets.
Nice. I thought you were going to say in an archive. In a pocket. Well, a pocket is an archive, isn't it?
It is. There should be more of them, and they should all be bigger.
Oh my God, that is a great. We got to use that line in our movie. Everybody has an archive on their pants. Okay.
You made it a little dirty there, but yes.
The fourth question, Alan Watts. Who's cleaning it up?
The women.
Hello. In 5, is it serious?
Yes, it's very serious.
Wow. Well, now I almost left this question out. You know, Hollis Frampton's a great experimental filmmaker, and he said, narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die. Can you forget to die?
I think you can. If you're living your life and you're just keep going, then it'll catch up to you eventually, maybe. But I feel like there's a level of it being able to will yourself through that.
Yeah, it's good. That's the answer I always want to get, but people go, no, you can't. But I'm not supposed to say this yet, but I'll say it. I changed the line a little. Can you forget to die is, can you forget to archive?
I hope not.
Right.
Then we're lost.
Yeah. We got a few more minutes, Hillary. This has really been fun, and I appreciate your time once again. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Enjoy summer camp more and live your life, and don't worry.
Nice.
Because you can't change it.
But you can't. I mean, you have made decisions in your life. You can't change it. So you think it's more fate or more free will?
No, I mean, you can't change the stuff you're worried about.
Oh, you can't change the stuff.
Because as a kid, I worried about everything, again, in the abstract. And
yeah. In the abstract,
it's out of your control. So just live. Live
your
life.
Just live.
You're a kid. Just live your life.
Yeah. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Over.
Well, that's archival too, because you know there's a picture of the patent, and it has it going over.
It's over. Exactly.
And 90% of people say over, but the 10% who say under, they have their reasons.
Everyone has their reasons for everything they do.
Yeah. If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
I'm very bad at titles. My college professors can tell you this. I was terrible at naming papers. Probably say it would probably have something to do with pockets, like keeping it in your pocket.
Oh, I like that. And they want to scent the glue and the binding. What smell?
My favorite smell is the smell of nothing.
Oh, that is good. Nothing is what I want. I love that. Nothing.
Because there are too many smells.
There's too many smells, yes. Okay, if a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
I would like it to be displayed in my hometown where I grew up. And I'm going to go with marble.
Nice. What's the town's name?
I grew up in Atlantic Beach, which is a small town outside Jacksonville, Florida.
Cool. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Something good I never had and I never want?
Yeah.
Chocolate. Dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate. You've never had dark chocolate?
No.
Wow.
I don't like chocolate.
Well, it is good indeed.
That's what I get told on the regular.
And that is funny that you've never had it. I love it. That's a great answer. So Leonard Cohen says the only way you can sell a concert is to put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. What role does risk play in your creative process?
Well, when I'm asked to do things like this or interviews or panels, I expose myself and my knowledge, and I always worry I'm going to say something stupid or say the wrong thing or talk about something I'm not supposed to. So the risk that I take for the most part in my life has more to do with when I'm being an advocate for archives than my actual day-to-day work. Although I constantly live in fear of things breaking. So.
Yeah. I love that. Advocate of archives, AOA. That's really good. That's what I'm an advocate for of archives. No, for or of. What should it be?
Either, I think, is fine.
It's either way, yeah. But Viola Spolin's a very interesting woman. She was a social worker in Chicago, and she helped invent comedy improv because she invented these role-playing exercises, and it spawned Second City and Saturday Night Live. And she has an interesting line: if the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it. What role has struggle played in your life?
I've always suffered from some level of self-doubt and thinking and imposter syndrome, like feeling like I haven't gotten where I am because of merit or because I've earned it.
Yeah.
Even though I have. Logically, I understand that, but I feel like imposter syndrome and constantly worrying that I'm not as smart as I think I am. And I'm wrong about a lot of things is a constant fear for other people to see.
I think a lot of us go through that. I think doubt is hardwired into the human condition.
I think it is.
Yeah. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
I think a lot of the sort of cultural movements that have come out of the previous administration and the reactions to it, hoping for a lot more to come of the current just absolute nightmare that's being rained upon the LGBT community and the young folks in that community and their reactions to that, and hoping that they can help sort of turn things around and make the world a better place that they deserve and that it should be.
Yeah. It's such a great line. It sounds so hallmarky card and mammy, but aren't we all here just to make the world a better place? Is that so hard? I mean,
the problem is I don't think enough people are.
Yeah. You mean enough people are trying to make it a better place?
I do not think enough people are trying to make it a better place.
Yeah. Even though they probably deep down inside know that what's the point of not trying to?
You'd think, but
yeah.
I hope more people realize that.
Sometimes I think conflict is the human condition. Like, what is the human condition? No, empathy, compassion, love, joy. But sometimes I think maybe it is conflict, and then it's how we process that, navigate it, integrate it, and all that.
I think it's passive aggressiveness. So.
Right. That's another good point. Yeah. What's the question? What's a question that remains unresolved for you?
I suppose, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
What do I do with my life from here? What's my next step?
Yep. And how has archiving shaped your behavior?
It's changed the way that I sort of interact with other people and things, because it makes me think more about people's pasts and histories and how that's shaped who they are, and that affects how I interact with them. It made me sort of realize how important it is to have these physical versions of memories. My grandmother passed away in at the beginning of the year. She was 96, and we were all home and going through photos and papers and things. And there, I saw stuff I'd never seen before. And you sort of learn new things about your own past when those things happen. So it affects the way that you look at everything in the world. Being an archivist has changed the way that I interact with anyone and everything.
Yeah, and Hillary, it's an amazing phenomenon how I imagine it got divvied out. Okay, you can take this, you can take that, when it was all consolidated. I mean, archive, it's like that's what University of Santa Barbara, who took my archives, David Siebert, he actually said, no, I want all the pixel tapes that are in the Oscars archives to come to me. So we have it all together. Yeah. And it's like, smart. But again, my archive's still scattered in other places. But you as an archivist, it is better to have it under one roof. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, yes and no. There are things that are special to other people. There are memories or objects that they have tied to something that other family members got. A lot of the sort of paper documents, photos, and things like that came to me because as the family historian, because I'm an archivist, they give those things to me, and I've subsequently put them properly in sleeves and folders, organized them, and they're in a document box in my house because that's how I handle those things. But like there's old picture frames, and it's not even about the picture inside of them, the frame you remember, because the picture inside of that frame would have changed. But no. So my brother has an old picture frame that we remember from my grandmother's house.
No.
And things like that should belong with the people who hold those memories.
Yeah.
But I've also I digitized all of these photos so that I could share them with my family. So you have to, as the keeper of those things, also be able to provide access to them.
Yeah. No, I like how you said, how does it shape your behavior? It says how I interact with people and things, because we're so connected. Okay, two more, we're out of here. Thank you so much. Thornton Wilder said in 1928, art is confession. Art is the secret told, but art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
Contentment, I think.
Wow, what a word. What does that mean to you?
Well, we talked about happiness can be fleeting and meaning is important, but I think you have to find how that meaning can help you focus on making your life better, and how you then having a better life also help other people. So being content and not envious of other people or wanting of things that you don't have. Yeah. Being okay with who and where you are. Yeah. Is what I aspire to. It's really good. It's T.S. Eliot said, you had the experience, but missed the meaning. So it is. That's true. Yeah. Okay. What gives you the most optimism? I'm excited to see who my brother's kids become. Because I don't have kids, so they're the closest I will have to them. And I'm excited to see who they become. I am optimistic at what they are going to do to help shape the future. Yeah. No pressure. No pressure. They'll watch this and go, you better. But it's beautiful, Hillary, because that is the answer I get the most. Youth, my kids, the young people. And it's beautiful. The guy the other day, I says, what's the best thing for a human being? He goes, reproduction. And I like, nobody's ever said it. It's like, what are we here for but to keep going? And what keeps us going by having kids, And I mean, I didn't have kids either, but I mean, I know there's enough kids in the world. And I love when people say youth. And it's funny because the first question, what's the best thing for a human being, I got from Wilhelm Reich, and he said the best thing for a human being is another human being.
And the last question is, what gives you the most optimism? That's what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said, other people. So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person. Hillary, thank you so much. I really learned a lot. And I just push ahead with all your positiveness in helping the world archive us better, you know.
I appreciate it. It was very fun. I was a little nervous, but I think I got through it.
Even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever. Thank you so much.
Thanks.